guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here today, and as a lot of you know, I very recently picked up this M1 Garand, you take your pick, and have probably put something like 46 minutes of YouTube video up about this, so I'm not going to get into specifics about it. You can certainly take a look at it again if you like. I know when I had this at the range today, a number of guys were drooling over it. But more specifically, when I picked this up, you know, this of course was America's primary infantry rifle from the very late 30s up through the mid 50s. And somewhere along the line it got replaced by the M14 and later the M16, of which this AR M4 wannabe, for lack of a better word, is a variant of that. And I've talked about this in a couple of videos as well. This is a Spikes build that I did. It's got a fixed front sight. I've got it set up right now with iron sights, and the reason is I wanted to compare shooting this particular firearm with iron sights as it would have been done, say, during the Vietnam War and afterwards, to shooting this with iron sights. Now, before we get too far into it, this is not a discussion of which is a better rifle. Okay, for the role that it plays and the needs of our military today, all the different variables combined, without a doubt, the AR platform, the M4 with select fire, which that's why I called this a wannabe. The real ones that have that third position on the selector switch are a more effective rifle. Okay, so the fact that you can easily put a myriad of optics on and off of this, that you can put floated rails, that you can do all of these things easily with all these different attachments, assortments, or whatever. The modularity of this alone makes this a better choice. But when we start talking about the specifics, the question comes, okay, is the 5.56 by 45 NATO round, is that a superior round to the 30-06 ball ammo that was used in the M1 Garand? Now, I'm just going to come right out and say it, guys. Without a doubt, in my mind, that round you see on the left is a much more powerful round, a much more lethal round, and a much longer range effective round than the round on the right. If somebody wants to come back and tell me that the 5.56 by 45, also known as the 223 Remington, is a more effective round against a human target in particular, you've lost all credibility with me. You don't know anything about ballistics. This is a much more powerful round, the 30-06, but it's also significantly heavier. And how many of those a troop can take with them into battle means a lot. The fact that you can shoot 8 of these without reloading in semi-auto is nice. The fact that you can shoot 30 of these without reloading in semi-auto or select fire is nicer. Okay, so just right off the bat, I just want to say, yeah, better, more lethal cartridge. If we're talking about World War I, World War II type warfare, this is probably a better way to go in terms of the average distances of engagement, especially in World War I. Modern day, where average engagement, I believe, I've heard is, you know, less than 70 yards. Maybe this makes a little bit more sense, but the fact of the matter is we're talking about these rifles being used in somewhat different roles. So the purpose of this video today isn't to compare these two, which I've kind of already done. The purpose of this video today is to show you, shooting open sights off a bench, which one of these two I can shoot better at both 100 and 200. 100 yards and 200 meters. Now you ask, why am I talking about 200 meters and 100 yards My local gun club has some type of silhouette shooting that they do, which is in meters, and so therefore their long range is in meters. So we're going to compare 100 yards versus 218 yards open sights. Some surprises along the way. Okay, one of the first things we want to talk about is sight radius. The longer the sight radius, typically the more accurate you can shoot with open sights, and that's the distance from the front to the rear sight. If we look at the distance between the front and the rear sight on this AR, it's about 17 inches. Okay. Now, on the original M16, it was a 20-inch barrel versus this 16. You had a much farther front sight, so, you know, all different variations. But in your typical 16-inch type rifle, that's what you're looking at, even shorter when you have a carbine length gas system. This has a mid-length. So we were talking 17 inches for that AR-15. And we need to go out past 28 and a half. So we're talking about a pretty significant increase in sight radius. That's one reason that I would expect the M1 Garand to shoot better. Now let me give you some reasons why I expect this AR would shoot better. One of the real advantages to this AR is going to be the drop-in trigger. You see that right there. This is set at about 3.5 pounds. It's super crisp and reliable and predictable, and it's a real easy to trigger to shoot accurately with. Whereas on this guy right here, it's a 2-stage trigger. You pull it back about that far, and then you've got a pretty consistent wall, and that's breaking closer to 6 pounds. So definitely not a target trigger by any stretch. And so, you know, I think the advantage goes to this particular AR. Now, if it had a mil-spec trigger on it, then all that's out the window. So we're just talking about this one. This does have a chrome line barrel and a fixed front sight, so it's not floated. So it's not going to be the most accurate AR that you're going to have, although this one's been fairly accurate for me. Is a pretty consistent 1 MOA shooter. So you have that. You have an adjustable buttstock, so you can really find the perfect position. Whereas, you know, here you go. Everybody, if you're 5'3", if you're Audie Murphy, here's your length of pull. If you're Wilt Chamberlain, here's your length of pull, and everybody in between. So, you know, a number of things about this particular firearm are going to make it inherently more accurate to shoot. And so please factor that in when we look at this. So it's off to the 100-yard range we go. First with the M1. I have this sped up a little bit because you guys don't want to watch me taking my time, which is what I'm doing. I took a 4-shot group, checked with the binoculars, and made a little bit of an adjustment up to get a little bit better slice of the target. So real easy to do. 1 click equals 1 inch, whether you're talking windage and elevation. I found that to be fairly true. And here you see my 2 efforts. The top group, obviously love those 2 in the middle that are touching. And all in all, about a 2-inch group up top, a little bit more on the bottom. Just decided also, hey, got to have some fun. Let's take some standing shots. Wasn't able to do prone or kneeling today, but we were able to do sitting and standing. Obviously, I'm not going to get as good a hits with this kind of scenario, but I do hit paper every time, and it's battle-worthy. Now we're moving on. Going to shoot that AR-15. This is also sped up. This is also 100 yards. And we're going to take 8 shots, so we're doing an apples 8-shot to 8-shot comparison. Obviously, with a better trigger, which I do have on this one, a lighter rifle, it's just easier to hold and so forth. And as you can see here, pretty decent group with the AR, with the iron sights. We did have one flyer off to the right, but outside of that, I'm happy with the group. And here we're just going to go ahead and just shoot the heck out of it. I just love doing that with the AR. So this is just kind of a hodgepodge. This is a combination of standing and sitting at 100 yards using the M1 Garand. And, you know, those are decent hits. Those are decent hits, but you can see obviously you start opening up a little bit. I started out shooting low and looked through binoculars and saw I need to move up, which I did. I notice as this thing heats up, they do start to tend to drift to the right. So, interesting, just to note. But what's real interesting is this. Based on my 100-yard shooting with the AR, here's my 200 meter. I took 8 shots to keep it aligned with the 8-round capacity of the clip for the Garand, and you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4 hits. Half of them didn't even hit the paper. And in all fairness, it was a little bit windy, and I was shooting 62 grain, which my rifle really likes, and I dropped down to 55 grain because that's all I had at this point. So it's not a completely fair comparison, but just based on the group that you saw shot at 100, you just really wouldn't expect this, would you? So based on that, what would you expect the Garand to do at 200 meters or 218 yards? You probably wouldn't have expected this. This was my first 4 shots. Again, 200 meters. I decided I thought I was hitting to the left, so I made an adjustment to the right, and I was wrong. I don't know why I thought that. So this was my next group, and I had a flyer up here. But all 8 shots hit paper, and one could argue that they grouped pretty well. I mean, this is a 4-shot group that, you know, you're really looking at in reality. Divide that by 2.18. This is close to 1 MOA when I couldn't even do that at 100. So that's a little bit interesting to me, and I think it might be the sight picture is somewhat better. Maybe that heavier bullet holds its trajectory better with a little bit of wind, but I would not have expected that. So what did we learn today? Is it fair to say that I shoot this AR-15 more accurately than I shoot the M1 Garand? Apparently at 100 yards I do, but apparently at 200 meters I most definitely do not. Is that a function of the accuracy of the rifle, the platform, the particular rifle, or is that a function of the way I see the sight picture and I execute the rifle with its various capabilities? I think that's more than likely the case. There's no question that, as stated earlier, this type of design is kind of the epitome of years of development and finding out what works for our military and the role we use it today. We're not taking a lot of 500-yard shots. 30 caliber tends to be a little bit more than is needed in most applications, certainly for house to house and things like that. So a more compact type of design is going to be preferred. But having said that, apparently at 200 meters, I'm a whiz with this thing, comparatively speaking, and I can't hit the broadside of the barn with an AR. I doubt if that's really true either. Again, might be a case where that longer sight radius we identified comes into play more. I think it might only in the standpoint of this front sight appears to cover up less of the target at 200 meters, and so I'm therefore able to be a little bit more accurate on where on the target I shoot. I also did mention that I believe that I did a disservice to my comparison by switching ammo in the middle of it, going from 62 grain down to a 55 grain full metal jacket with the AR. So there is that. But what I'd like to say more than anything else is that I think it's the shooter more than anything else that makes things happen. There was a guy next to me at that 200 meter range shooting about a $3,000 rig today. He had magnification dialed up to 11 or 12. He had a very expensive fluted rifle, so forth and so on. And we walked up to our targets together, and when he saw what I had accomplished with this, he couldn't believe it, because I actually put better groups together on that target than he did using a very expensive rig. I don't think that this was better than his expensive hunting rifle and super expensive optic. I just think I happened to shoot it better today than he shot that. So there's always those kind of things that come into the equation. But I thought this would be kind of a fun little comparison to do today. Nothing scientific about it. I'm not drawing any great conclusions. I love shooting iron sights, and I thought it'd be fun to compare these two. But hope you enjoyed watching this today. This is Dr. Drake 63 saying so long.